Oral History Program is visiting again in Marshall County, and this is Ray Mofield, and we're here today at the home of Mr. and Mrs. George Barker, Benton RFD 7. That's right across the road from Zion's Cause Baptist Church. So that'll give you some idea of where we are. Thank you very much, George, for letting me come.
You're welcome, Ray.
I guess this is my first time to visit in your home, but I've enjoyed some good meals with you down at the Oak Valley University homecoming, and that's rolling up here about the third Saturday in August again.
Yeah, it's going to be here pretty soon.
George, you're the youngest looking man I've ever seen to be 65 years old.
Well, I'm over 65 years old.
Where were you born, George?
Well, I was born here in Marshall County. I was born down on the bottom road, about a mile and a half west of Scale. You know where Scale is?
Oh, yeah. You know Janie Bell Blumenberg, my
Yes,
wife, was from the Oak Valley, Scale general metropolitan area.
Well, Janie and me we're distant cousins, and so she grew up just short distance from where I grew up, but of course I'm quite a bit older than she is.
Well, she's just a baby girl, even though she's retired.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm 9 years older than she is. So you lived on what is generally known as the bottom road. Who was your father?
My father was Ed Barker. Now, he went by that name. Actually, his name was William Ezra, but they didn't anybody know that his name was William Ezra because he went by the name of Ed all of his life, just about. And my mother was Noni Peck. She was a Peck, and there was three of us children. And
all right, you had what, a brother? Sister?
I had a brother and a sister, yeah.
And who were they?
Wallace was the boy, and Erie was the girl.
All right, so you're a native. I mean, just nobody can be much more of a native than you are, can they? And with the Peck names, and there must be 1,000 of those around.
That's right.
There's so many of them that a lot of them not even kin to one another, are they?
Yeah, that's right. Because I married a Peck, see, and we traced our ancestry back, you know, before we got married, and we might be all way down the line cousins, you know, but it's very, very little. We're very little related.
Well, we shouldn't be too alarmed about that, I suppose. Think of the poor Smiths.
Yeah, that's right.
There are 100 million of them, seem like it. Now, they're not kin to one another. There are very many of them, I guess. All right, what was the grade school that nearest you that you attended?
I went to Oak Valley School.
Was that is right across the road from the church?
That's right. That's right.
Was there a spring there?
There's a spring there, and that's where we got our water, our drinking water for the school.
Do you happen to remember any teachers you might have had?
Yes, I can remember about all of them. My first teacher was Emma Johnson. She married Clarence Blakeney. I was Clarence Blakeney's wife.
Well, I certainly know Mr. Clarence.
Yeah, well, just about everybody in Marshall County knows Mr. Clarence.
He's 90s, I believe.
I imagine he's in his 90s, yes. And she was my first school teacher. I don't remember my second school teacher, but let's see, Laureen Combs was one of my school teachers, and Miranda Young was one of them, and Walter Blumenberg was one.
Oh, all right.
And Reba Blakeney. She married Phillips. She married Bill Phillips.
Well, was she kin to Clarence?
Yes, yes.
Would have
I
been.
believe Clarence is her uncle.
Yeah.
I believe that's right.
Tell us something about the routine in those days of going to school. How was it different to 1986?
Well, it's quite a bit different. We didn't have the things to play with that they have now. See, we
So
had
you didn't have a great big playground with all sorts of swings and rides and teeter-totters?
No. We played town ball, and we played two-eyed cat. Did you ever hear of two-eyed cat?
I've heard of that, and
Well,
about how did that go?
well, you have two batters. Then you have a man behind the batter. He's the catcher.
Mm-hmm.
You have a man you have a fellow in the center that pitches the ball to either. He can pitch the ball to either batter, and then you have out in the field. You have different ones around in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they catch that ball, you could catch it on the first bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you caught that ball on the fly or on the first bounce, then you got to bat.
And the other fellow had to take
Then
your place
he
in the
had to
field.
go to the field, yeah.
Yeah.
So it just switched around, But every time the ball was hit, the batters had to change post. They had to go back and forth every time he hit the ball.
Well,
And if he just knocked the ball a little piece, you could cross him out. And if you crossed him out, if you caught the ball and crossed him out, well, you got to bat.
Say, that was an interesting game. Let me back up just a little bit and inquire one more thing. Did they pitch to the different batters in all, or were you surprised at which one was pitched to?
No, they'd pitch to one time, and then
And the other
the next.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that worried me there for a minute.
They'd keep on, until they,
Uh-huh.
until they got them out.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Two-eyed cat. Well, that's the first time I've ever really heard it explained, but I've heard it mentioned a number of times.
It finally faded out, after basketball and everything got so popular and all, a lot of those games faded out.
Mhm.
This town ball we played, it was played a lot like softball,
Yeah.
but we didn't have any. We had to make our own balls, out of just rolling.
Wind them up out of twine.
Wind them up out of twine, just kind of more or less rag balls, and then our bats was just kind of like a.
You cut off a good solid hickory limb and trimmed it up, smoothed it
Yeah,
up.
or either got a paling out of a paling fence, and
Yeah.
trimmed it down for a handle.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So they didn't spend a whole lot on recreation equipment. Now, you didn't have a dozen teachers either, did you? You just had one
Just
in the class,
one teacher.
and instead of
And,
a teacher for each class, that poor teacher taught all
She
8
taught
grades.
all 8 grades, yeah. She started off, I believe back then you started off in the primer. They call it the primer. That's
Mhm.
when that's what I started in, the primer. Well, sometime you'd stay on one page, 2 or 3 days,
Yeah.
You'd stay on that page till you learned how to read it.
So you learned.
Well, so one day I come home with my book, and my mother got to looking at it, and she said, "What have you done to this book?" Said, "Where's the other pages?" And I told her, I said, "I tore them out." She said, "What'd you tear them out for?" I said, "Well, I know where my next lesson's going to be when I tear them out, because that's only page left in the, there." I said, "That's where my next lesson is."
Well, I never heard of that before, George.
You're supposed to mark that, and you could, a lot of times, you know, you could take those books and sell them to somebody else when you got through with them, but I didn't sell mine because I had all the pages tore out.
A new invention, yeah, okay. Well, that's fine. All right, you finished then at Oak Valley, and did anybody in those days do as they did in my little one-room grade school? That is, the boys got through and they just kept going. They'd ask the teacher each year, say, well, could I repeat the 8th grade? And some of them went till they were 21 years old.
Yeah.
Got married.
Yeah.
So you'd find 5-year-olds in the school, and
Yeah.
you'd find 21-year-olds, all in the same room.
Yeah, I went to school, when I first started going to school, I went to school when 2 of my aunts did, and they were grown, and they was having boyfriends, you know, but they still in grade school. See?
Yeah. But many of those people were real sharp scholars, and they could spell
right.
well, and they could write, and they read well. You had, memorized some poetry?
Yes.
First one thing to another.
I wasn't very good at that either.
Well, what'd you like best? What, arithmetic?
Well, I liked all of it. Yes, I liked arithmetic pretty good, and I liked geography pretty good. And you know, back in them days, we had what they call a regular geography book, you know, and so.
You had to
I
memorize all the states,
Yeah,
capitals,
that's right.
and
Yeah.
so on, various countries in the world. Well, I heard you say a moment ago you married a Peck. Now, what was her name?
Reba
Reba. And her father
was Willie Peck,
Yeah.
and her mother was Blanche Hancock before she married Willie Peck.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any grandparents on either side?
Yes, I remember my grandpa Barker. Let's see, he's the only grandpa, but I remember 2 of my great grandpas.
Mm-hmm.
One of my great grandpas was Benjamin F. Peck, and my other great grandpa was a farmer, and his name was Bale Farmer. So I remember my grandma Peck, and well, she was a farmer before she married the Peck. And
Now, what did your dad do for a living? I suppose he was farmer. Most people were.
well, he was when I got big enough to remember, he was a peddler. He had a little grocery store down there on Bottom Road, and he had routes. He had 3 routes a week. He went out 3
Monday,
routes a
Wednesday,
week.
Friday, maybe.
Yeah, and he peddled in a wagon, pulled a wagon with 2 little mules.
Well, now, I
he'd-
never saw anything like that. We had a peddler that came by our house, Wiley Young, but he drove a little pickup truck-like thing.
Well, my daddy had a wagon and had springs put on it. He had regular wagon springs. That'd make it ride easier, and then he bought, people, the farmers, and they'd sell him eggs. Well, actually, they'd swap their eggs for groceries. Eggs, chickens, and butter.
Yeah.
He bought butter.
When the peddler came in, he had a good little bit of merchandise he'd collected.
He did. And that was our job of casing those eggs. Those eggs had to be put in a case. And a case held 30 dozen. And a lot of times he'd have 15 cases of eggs. We'd have to case them of the evening after he got in. Sometimes it'd be after dark, when we get through.
Yeah.
But then after that,
Well, that is better than worming tobacco.
Well, after he quit that though, we started farming. He did, and that was part of my job, was worming that tobacco.
Yeah.
And I had when I was going to high school, I had an acre of tobacco that was my project in agriculture. And that was when the Depression come around.
The FFA sort of thing, you had to have a project.
Yeah, you had to have a project, and make a report on it, for your agriculture. Well, the Depression hit, then. And this acre of tobacco, the principal, agriculture teacher, he would come out there every so often and check on this tobacco. It was a real pretty patch of tobacco, and it's real good.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the year that tobacco didn't sell, didn't bring any price. And I got, after all expenses and everything was paid, I got $2 out of my tobacco crop. Out of my acre of tobacco, I got $2.
That wouldn't have been 1933, would it?
And somewhere along about then, it's either 32 or 33, I think that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had enough. You could buy a pair of shoes then for $2.
Yeah.
I got me a pair of shoes for $1.95, and I had a nickel left.
Yeah. Well, that same year, my dad and I was just a kid, but he had 6 acres tobacco, and it brought, when all expenses were paid, except the rent on the place, it brought $21. And so he gave Mr. Blaylock, farm owner, 7, and we had 14 left. I remember that real well. That is to last you for 12 months. So you didn't buy a whole lot with, even though prices were low. You could have bought a new Ford for $450.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, well, those are wonderful times. Now, let's get back to Reba again. How'd you meet her?
Well, I was working for my uncle, Irvin Poe, at Palma in a grocery store. And she lived just across the road from the grocery. And so she was going to high school at Calvert City. And
you went to Sharp, did you?
I went to Sharp, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I was already out of high school then, and so I had a girlfriend at Calvert City, going to Calvert City School at that time, and Reba would take our love notes. She was our love note carrier.
Mail carrier.
Yeah, she was a mail carrier for us, and of course I saw her every day, and just about every day, and she'd bring me a note, and then I'd write this girl a note, and so that's the way we got acquainted. So finally I asked her if she wanted to go to show with me, so she did, and then we started going together, and from then on.
Now, where was the nearest movie that you could?
Paducah.
Paducah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we went to movies in Paducah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting story. I suppose even in literature, like John Alden and Priscilla and Miles Standish, and Miles Standish got John Alden to speak to Priscilla, and she said, "Speak for yourself, John." So it sometimes works out that way.
Yeah, yeah.
You get introduced to somebody else,
Yeah.
and there's more attraction there. Well, you were married then after so long a courtship and so on. Were you married in Marshall County?
No, we were married in Metropolis. We went to Metropolis.
Yeah. Now, did you ever leave this area and work anywhere? Or
I worked in Paducah, and I worked in Paducah. We moved to Paducah in 1944, and then we moved back out here in '74. We lived in Paducah for 30 years.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't go to Detroit?
Oh, no.
Anything like that?
I worked a little better than 2 years in Cairo, Illinois, back in the
on
50s.
The railroad, or?
No, I worked for a dealer, a Chevrolet dealer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, it was a Pontiac dealer.
Yeah.
Pontiac dealer.
Well, Cairo was a larger town then than it is today, I understand.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Kind of gone downhill a bit. Then you came back to Paducah. Did you
No, no.
stay in the automobile business?
Yes, I worked for Wilson Chevrolet altogether about 25 years.
Well, I saw a man last night who worked there. He was from Hardin originally. His name is Sloan. Did you know Joe?
Joe Sloan, he worked there at the same time I did. Yeah. Well, I knew Joe though over at Benton, from Benton.
Yeah.
See, the first job I had was other than working for my uncle. I drove an oil truck, standard oil truck from Benton, out of Benton. I worked over there for Tullis Black for about, I believe, about 5.5 years. And
Well, I understand you've retired, but that you just wanted something to do, and you kept finding jobs after you retired. Now,
that's right. Yeah. And
well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm working. See, I was working over here at the park. I was working at State Park. I was a ranger there. And I decided I'd worked there about 6 years, and I decided that I thought I wanted to retire. So I put in for my retirement, and then after I retired, about 3 months after I'd retired, I knew I'd made a mistake. I shouldn't have never left over there. But they did call me back over there, and I worked 7 more months. Well, then, after that, I didn't like being, retired again, so I called this security, Ray Elliott in Paducah. I called him up one day and asked him if he needed anybody. He said, I don't right now, but he said, I will probably in a few days, and I'll give you a call. Well, so in a few days he did. He gave me a call. That was 3 years ago, and I've been working for him ever since.
And you're assigned to what we did know as Ohio River Steel.
That's right, and it's North Star Steel now.
North Star.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you're back, and you're on the job, and you're happy. I guess you're sort of like I've been. I'm happiest, I think, at work than I am anywhere.
I am too.
Yeah. Well, you've got a beautiful place here. You're living with this your father-in-law's area?
Yes.
And
yes, it is.
he's here with you. And you just got a very beautiful area, but there's a good little bit of grass to grow around.
It sure is. and it's a growing too.
In fact, you may have to mow before the day's over if it dries up.
If it dries up, I will.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get back to some other aspects of life in the area. What did you do for entertainment after you and your wife married? And before you took her to a show to Paducah, was there play parties or square dances or anything in the area?
Well, after we married, we didn't go to play parties and things, but used to, before we got married, we went to play parties, and but we mostly went to ball games and things like that.
You play basketball at Sharp?
Yes, I did.
Who
Tried to.
Yeah, who was the coach?
Homer Holland.
Now, you had a state championship, possibly. Was that a little after you'd gotten out?
That was 4 years after I got out. Yeah.
Well, Homer Holland was a great guy, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was a good teacher, and he was a good coach. And the main thing is all the boys liked him.
I got acquainted with him when I went to Paducah working for radio, and he'd talk about those days a lot. He was then at Lone Oak.
Yeah.
And he surprised me one day by saying that he went to high school at Hardin, boarded up there.
Sure enough.
Yeah. There were only 2 high schools in the area then, Benton and Hardin, and so for some reason or other he went there, boarded and so forth. I guess a lot of people did that back in those days. Well, tell us about your first car. Did you grow up like I did, just dying for a car, maybe?
Yeah, but I didn't get a car. I never did have a car of my own until after I got married.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for Standard Oil over there at Benton when I bought my first car. And
what model was it?
it was a 36 Ford.
Oh, one of those sharp
Yeah,
V8s.
36 Ford V8.
You know, if you had a 36 Ford V8 convertible in perfect condition today, well, that thing would bring $30,000.
Oh yeah.
There's something about the 36 that makes it a big collector's car.
Yeah, they were good. They were good cars, and they was pretty car too.
Fast.
Yeah, it was
for the
fast.
day.
Yeah, for the day. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, my first one I bought was, I got it to drive to high school, and it was a 26 Model T. Now, it had a lot of great things about it, I'm sure, but there were some things that weren't so great. If it was real cold, you had to jack up the wheel to start it. Did you ever see one?
Yeah, we had to do that.
Yeah, your dad maybe had a Model
Yeah,
T.
I think he bought, he had 2 Model Ts. He bought one, used one, and then he bought a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Well, George, we're down to only about 2 minutes left now. If you have some things there you'd like to say before we get off?
no, not particularly, but,
Do you remember any real funny incidents? Oh, by the way, I never did ask you if you had any children.
yeah, we've got a daughter, and she's got 2 daughters, and then we've got a great grandson.
Well, are any of them near enough that you get to see them?
They're all in Paducah.
Uh-huh.
All in Paducah.
Well, that's wonderful. You can enjoy I believe the Bible says that children's children are the delight of old men. And I hate to call you an old man, but anyway, we're older than we were when we were 20.
That's right. That's right.
So, well, that's just great. So you and your wife are enjoying life and getting ready to go back to the high school or University of Oak Valley reunion.
Yeah, we planning on it, yeah.
Well, good. It's been a pleasure talking with you, George, and we thank you for letting us come into your home. And I hope it dries up enough for you to get to mow your yard today.
Well, I appreciate you coming by, Ray.
We've been visiting today, as we said when we signed on, in the home of George Barker of Benton RFD 7, which actually is on U.S. Highway 68, and it's just across the road from Zion's Cause Baptist Church. I'm Ray Mofield, and we return you now to our studio.